So hello everyone, I'm Christian. I'm founder and CEO of Ubiq. And Ubiq is making shared mobility sustainable and profitable. So if you take sustainability and profitability, these are two animals you would not necessarily put into the same cage in a zoo, right? They don't particularly like each other, right? And that is specifically a problem in the industry that we're in and that we're contributing, and that's mobility. Why is that? So at the moment, we see a huge transformation in mobility happening, or starting from ownership-driven business models, where I used to own my vehicle, to usership-driven business models, right? So mobility as a service and shared mobility. Those usership-driven business models have some inherent challenges that make them very, very difficult to be run in a profitable way. At the same time, we're convinced that sustainability has to be built on economically feasible and sustainable business models at the end of the day. So that's what our contribution is, making shared mobility and hence sustainable mobility more profitable. What are the reasons for the fact that it's so hard? First of all, and this is something that's not very well known, but in shared mobility, the majority of demand is currently not served. So 60 to 70% of demand is never ever served. Right? And that creates a huge loss in opportunity, number one. Number two, on the electric vehicle side, everyone's talking about EV adoption. At the moment, if you run a shared fleet and that fleet has to make money, an EV is not a good option. So why is that? Because financially, you have a disadvantage of very high operational cost, and that's due to charging. And secondly, charging and the way it's currently done also leads to a significantly lower availability of EVs in comparison to combustion engine cars, right? So that's why a lot of fleet managers actually are pretty slow when it comes to EV adoption. And that has to change. And we're exactly changing that. And let me tell you how we do that. So the center and the core of it is a software data-driven platform that's fueled by hundreds and hundreds of different data sources that allows us to predict demand for mobility in a very granular and a very accurate way. Yeah? So these are millions and millions of real-time data points that the system and the algorithms generate every minute. And based on those data points, we render services like automated rebalancing, which allows to adjust the supply side, so the fleet, to meet future demand, but also predictive charging, which allows us to change the charging patterns to raise the availability of EVs to a level that is comparable with combustion engine cars. In some cases, we also use our own street crowd service, which is a crowd-based execution service, to be able to execute in real time in a very scalable and robust way, and we do that already in 10 cities across Europe, North and South America. So the impact for our clients and for mobility providers is tremendous. We take a look at 20 to 50% revenue increase for a given fleet size. And that's an impact that's unheard of. What we also do now, because we started doing this, we started serving with charging as a service, a lot of fleets in a lot of cities. Utility providers and energy providers approached us and said, hey, listen, we more and more get a problem with the increase of demand for charging. We've deployed hundreds and thousands of charging stations, but only some of them, 10%, 15%, are really utilized, overutilized, and actually citizens complain that they never find available chargers. And 20% are so-so, but 70% of all the charging stations are completely underutilized, right? And that's getting a problem. And again, we're talking about the demand and supply mismatch. So it's about distributing the demand side. And that's exactly what we're also providing as a service now towards energy providers, to guide the demand side to the underutilized charging infrastructure, and by that, creating a much higher bandwidth of available charging in the city at a certain given point in time, and at the same time, providing a better return on investment. We scaled out in the last 24 months quite radically. We are a Vienna-based Austrian company. Our first client was in the US. We brought the success back to Europe and are now attacking Latin America, where we have the first two deployments happening. So what this slide should, in a sublime way, also tell you that our technology can be deployed anywhere in the world, and that's happening in a very short period of time. So within 6 to 8 weeks, we can deploy our service in live mode, in production mode, in any city in the Western world. So our contribution to a carbon-free world, I think by now got a bit obvious, but to summarize, number one, it's the acceleration of shared mobility, which is the better and more sustainable option, and lowering privately owned cars. And secondly, through making EVs financially more attractive than combustion engine cars, we also drive the adoption of electric vehicle side. So in terms of company growth, and also that's also why we're here, and we're just raising our Series A. We've seen since inception 2020 very stable and nice growth, and you don't see necessarily a COVID impact there as well, right? We don't just grow quite well, we also scale quite well. So if you take a look at the 12 months comparison quarter to quarter, while revenues grew by a factor of 2.3x, the fixed cost only grew by 1.1x. So very, very efficient what we're doing. What I think is outstanding as well is that our net dollar retention rate is outstandingly high with over 150%, and that shows three things. Number one, that we have a really strong product market fit. Number two, that we're able to product differentiate within the existing client base, and obviously, number three, we have a very low churn. Yeah? And finally, capital efficiency. This is now, again, a very important KPI in the VC arena, finally. We're very proud that we can take a look at the hype ratio or factor of 1.35, which means every single euro that we've fundraised so far has been spent in a very efficient way. As mentioned, I just started to raise the Series A. This is going to be a round of 7 million euros. Beside the commitments from existing shareholders, which consist of financial VCs and corporate strategic VCs, we're looking for a co-investor and one or two, a lead investor and one or two co-investors. If you're interested, happy to have a chat about that after the session, and thanks very much for your attention.